So we finally have a look at Nintendo's next console, the Switch 2, and I just want to share some of my thoughts on it. You know, the trailer itself was a bit of a tease, it wasn't on for very long, but there was a decent amount of things to talk about, so let's get into it. This trailer mainly went over the aesthetics of the new console and how it's different to the previous one. The Switch 2, which is the name of the new system, seems to be more of the same when it comes to the console hybrid concept. There seems to be a lot of back and forth over the name of the new system, the Switch 2, but I think personally, as someone who loved the handheld hybrid concept, it's really nice to see Nintendo double down on that idea moving forward. Back in the day with the 2017 trailer, Nintendo really had to sell the idea of a console handheld hybrid. It's hard to believe now, but the Switch's premise of being a handheld hybrid really was a risky idea back in the day. Sure, you had niche examples like the PlayStation TV, shoutouts if you remember that by the way, or hooking up your laptop to a monitor, but this really was something on a mainstream level. In the original Switch trailer, they really had to establish this idea on a casual level that was quick and easy to understand, but now that they've done that, they really just have to show off what this console looks like since we already know what it will do. I think with Nintendo doubling down on the name Switch 2 is really fitting since they already went out of their way to establish this market in the first place, which has led to some really healthy competition with the Steam Deck. Also, this idea of a system is just amazing. It got a huge audience of people back into gaming who couldn't play otherwise, and as someone who doesn't like having their system hooked up and stationary in one place, I never want to go back to how it used to be. I feel like on a spec level, as we don't really know what the Switch 2 is working under the hood, I don't really mind if there's any trade-off in graphical fidelity, since at the end of the day, for me personally, I really feel like graphics kind of peaked with the PlayStation 4 Pro. I've been seeing on social media people complain how this new system isn't very innovative and does anything different, but in all honesty, if you look back on Nintendo's previous consoles like the SNES, the N64, or even the Wii U to some degree, they just really doubled down on the previous ideas of the console that came before it, so this is very fitting if you follow that pattern, although I don't really think patterns are a good thing to follow with consoles, but in this case it's very obviously done here. Okay, let's talk about the actual trailer itself. They really went for that whole new car feel with the look of the Switch 2, and it's funny how they just kept going back to the previous model and just showing how this one's better. I'm cautiously optimistic about the new Joy-Cons. I like how they're bigger because the original ones were quite small in my hands, but also the new idea with them being like a socket that plugs into the Switch itself. I feel like this is going to be a much more better solution to the rails that we had with the previous console. With the original Switch model, the Joy-Con rails would deteriorate over time. I remember in handheld mode when my palms would push up on the controller, it would lead to it desyncing. But the Joy-Cons themselves were very uncomfortable in handheld mode, so I just decided to buy some Nixie controllers later on. But anyway, these new magnetic sockets look like they won't have those issues anymore. I also just love the aesthetics of these new controllers with the original red and blue being underneath the analog stick as the colours. One thing that's a little frustrating about this trailer is that you can clearly see some extra buttons on the side, but they don't really elaborate on what those will be useful for. The console itself seems to be taking a lot of notes from the Switch OLED, such as the amazing kickstand that was a huge improvement over the original model. There's a lot of things in this trailer that they don't elaborate on, such as the two USB charging ports at the top and bottom of the system. I know a lot of people complained about the original Switch, how the port was at the bottom, which made holding it in handheld mode whilst charging very uncomfortable at times. This implementation could literally just be them addressing that complaint, but a part of me really thinks that there's something more to this new addition. Like, how many systems do you know that have two charging ports on them? I can't think of any other. I'm just throwing this idea out there, but one idea they could try with the top port is how the Steam Deck allows you to use both screens when docked. I was a little disappointed in this trailer to see that the Switch dock seems to be covering the screen like the previous model. And that's because I believe that there's a lot of potential for having the screen exposed when it comes to using it for other games. Or even just having two applications open at the same time, similar to what the Wii U gamepad did on the internet browser. Anyway, moving forward, it looks like the Switch 2 is going to be slightly bigger in size compared to the previous model. It's quite funny to me because I feel like there's a bit of power scaling when it comes to these handheld systems, since each new one seems to outdo the previous one in terms of size. I don't mind them personally since my hands are quite big, but I can understand if some people might find them difficult to hold. All I can say is one thing though, and it's a far cry from previous handhelds like the Game Boy Advance and DS. Of course, this is just me looking back on a technical level. I prefer these new handhelds being bigger since I prefer the screen size. I've been trying to avoid leaks for this system since if you've been anywhere since 2018 with the Switch Pro, it feels like there's been a new leak every week. I don't want to rant about it for too long, but I will definitely say that the Switch 2 was something everyone knew long before the console was actually officially revealed, which I definitely think has ruined a lot of people's expectations for this trailer. I don't want to go on about it, but when the Switch 2 is out and everyone's got it in their hands, I just hope that we don't hear about the next console for at least 5 years. I still actively play the original Switch to this day, discovering new titles and gaming experiences. But what was so annoying about these leaks at the time is that they overshadowed a lot of amazing games that came out. And I feel like discourse surrounding leaks is very toxic in general. I just hope that in the future nothing gets bad as these Switch 2 leaks. Since if you was a part of social media at the time, it felt like every single week we was hearing something different. And in all honesty, it just ruins the surprise. Like, people knew this was gonna happen long before it even came out. So yeah, if I missed anything out in this video that was reported on leaked, that's why, because I wasn't really paying attention to them. Anyway, now this is probably the biggest bombshell of the entire reveal, and that is a brand new Mario Kart game. Now, I'm not sure whether to call it Mario Kart 9 or 10, since there seems to be a bit of discourse whether or not Tour counts as a mainline entry. Regardless though, this was definitely the best part of the presentation and kinda overshadowed the console reveal in my opinion. We got literally the smallest possible look at it, similar to the Mario Odyssey reveal in the original Switch presentation, but I'm really hoping it's one of the launch titles for the new console. To me, the last time we got a proper brand new Mario Kart was with Mario Kart 8 way back in 2014. If any one of Nintendo's heavy hitters deserves a lineup with a brand new console, it's this one. Now, there really isn't a whole lot to dissect here, but I'll try and say what I can. One thing that a lot of people pointed out on social media, and I have a screenshot right here, is that if you count the number of races at the start of each race, it looks like there's 24 of them this time around. Which is pretty wild if this fact is true, since that's double the amount of previous games. This is almost reaching the same level as races in the F-Zero series. But outside of that, we got a closer look at some of the new character models for the characters in this one. They all look pretty amazing, but one thing you might have noticed is that this game looks very similar to Mario Kart 8, and that's because I really think that that game is the peak of graphics. Still though, on a visual level, this game is very impressive and gives us somewhat of an insight of the kind of graphics we might be dealing with the Switch 2. I think the one last thing to take away from this is Donkey Kong's new model. It's very different and seems more like the movie model. It might seem that Nintendo's done with the original design for the character that Rare established with the Donkey Kong Country games. But that being said, a lot of the models here, such as Bowser, seem to be taking a lot of inspiration from the original Super Mario Kart game on SNES. I don't know, a part of me might have to get used to it over time, but I am a fan of this more stylized look, but of course with Donkey Kong's case it is more of a nostalgia thing. And that's literally it. The new track looks kinda cool, it's like a highway kind of thing going on, but that's all I can really say. There's nothing to really analyse outside of these small details. After this section, Nintendo elaborated on the backwards compatibility, albeit in a very small amount. This is their own words here, but it says that Nintendo Switch 2 plays both physical and digital Nintendo Switch games. Certain Nintendo Switch games may not be supported or fully compatible on Nintendo Switch 2. Details will be shared on the Nintendo website at a later date. They are being very vague on what they mean by this. To me personally, this is complete speculation, but I think this might be referring to online games. For instance, Minecraft, like a lot of consoles get their own version of Minecraft, so maybe you can't use the Switch version on the Switch 2. A big trend with this reveal is that I really wish they elaborated more on certain things like this. But regardless, I'm still glad that the Switch 2 is backwards compatible, since I still have a decent backlog of games from the previous console that I'll probably still be getting through by the time the Switch 2 comes out. Okay, now the next part of this presentation is the absolute gut punch. We have April 2nd, 2025 for the Nintendo Direct for the Switch 2. This is quite a substantial amount of time between now and the next time that we'll hear from this console. There has been some speculation online as to why this is the case. For instance, between now and April it allows third-party developers to announce games that are coming out for the Switch 2. There's also just the natural hype cycle course where over time people get more excited for what's coming out. And maybe it's just also a caution to allow people to maybe save up or plan ahead of time for when this system drops. It is pretty funny though, since I feel somewhat gaslit by this announcement, since if you go back to Nintendo's Twitter account, they're literally just promoting the Switch as if the Switch 2 never got revealed. The official site for the Switch 2 is also somewhat scarce. All it really shows is the reveal trailer alongside some small details such as the hands-on event. Although for some small speculation, I do think there will be a Direct in February, maybe a partner showcase or something on that level. This is mainly because if you consider this point in time, we only know the release date for Xenoblade X Definitive Edition, which whilst that game is incredible and everyone should play it, since without it we wouldn't have gotten Breath of the Wild, I don't think Nintendo could bank on just this release coming out in March and nothing else. We still have Pokemon Legends ZA alongside Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Both titles do not have a release date scheduled yet. Pokemon Day is in February, and I do think that we'll get a release date for Legends ZA alongside a presentation. As for Prime 4 Beyond, I'm going to make a pretty out there prediction and predict that it will probably come out between now and when the Switch 2 is released. But I don't think this is the end of Switch support for the system, since you might remember but back in 2017 and 18 when the Switch was out, the 3DS was still receiving games. Judging by Nintendo's strategy of silently releasing a trailer for the Switch 2, I do think that their plan is to gradually move the user base of the Switch to the new system. But they're definitely aware that the user base is in the hundreds millions, and I don't think they plan on abandoning them anytime soon. So yeah, I'm somewhat anticipating a Direct that will mainly focus on Switch titles that are coming out during the lifespan of the Switch 2. Just some closing thoughts from me. In terms of console debuts, this one was pretty alright, but compared to the reveal of the original Switch, there was a lot more going on there. I love what's here, but the biggest issue in my opinion is that they don't elaborate on literally anything, which I get, like they just want you to be hyped for when it comes out, but for me personally I just want to hear more, which I guess is a good thing because they've got me now. One thing I'm really hoping from the Switch 2 is that it kind of unifies my game console library, since at the minute I go between the Steam Deck, the original Switch and the PlayStation 5 quite a lot. The PS5 is mainly for third party titles alongside the odd exclusive here and there. But the big issue the original Switch had is whilst a lot of the third party support was impressive with titles such as Doom Eternal and Hogwarts Legacy even running on the console, but due to the hardware differences the Switch missed out on a lot of third party titles. There was also a lot of issues with third parties in general, such as cloud versions of games with Resident Evil and the infamous Kingdom Hearts ports on the system. I know that the Switch 2 won't be as powerful as the PlayStation 5 due to its handheld nature, but I'm hoping that with a bump in hardware specs that we'll see less trade-offs when it comes to third-party ports on the system. But if I'm being completely honest, the Switch 2 already has some huge shoes to fill when it comes to the amazing success of the original Switch. Following up that amazing system is not going to be easy, especially since the Switch was being pushed heavily from the failure of the Wii U. I think as well just combined that I played more games from the Switch's library than any other console before. And that's mainly because of just how well Nintendo supported this system, be it through Wii U ports, remakes or brand new releases. With both handheld developers alongside console developers being unified as one, the Switch never really suffered from any significant software droughts like the 3DS and Wii U. But at the same time during its early days, the Switch had to rely on its quality Wii U ports which managed to reach a new user base. As someone who has already played those games, it felt weird to see them get re-released, but looking back they made sense and the deluxe ports justified playing them again. What I'm trying to say is that the Switch 2 is in a really interesting place since it can no longer rely on re-releasing older games given its backwards compatible nature. And on the fact that the final Wii U port with any significance being Xenoblade X coming out in March, and what you have is a system that has a lot to live up to. It's just ironic since on a hardware level the Switch 2 seems to be playing it very safe, but on a software level things might be very different. Regardless of what I think though, only time can truly tell what will happen with the Switch 2. But now I'm very curious, what were your thoughts on the Switch 2? Are you excited? Also, any feedback on this video would be appreciated. Thanks for watching and have a nice rest of your day.